folks. Joining me today, we have our co-host, Timberwolf.
Hey guys, how's it going?
He's been a little MIA, having a few things, schedules haven't met up, yada yada yada. We excuse him for all of that. He's been gone for, but he's back to help us out with this particular episode because it's actually involving him. Um, so, just to give a little intro into what is going on today, we're going to go over and discuss his 143K DPS run that he had recently. This was actually a run without me. I wasn't involved in this at all, so I wasn't there to buff him up some. Um, and the theory behind some of these runs is for one particular purpose, and that is to push ourselves to the upper limits of what we can do. We're not doing this to go around and say, "Hey, look what I did," blah blah blah. It's just to say, this is what I want to try and challenge and push myself to do further and higher, and that's what it comes down to.
And the other part of it, and this is something that everybody on the TeamSpeak knows because they've been listening to us, it's pretty much turned into a World of Warcraft or other MMO style run where you have one particular ship or person. They're taking all the threat, all the damage, so that everyone else can do whatever they need to do, whether it's heal, DPS, debuff, and they're not going to get hit at all. All of the threat, all of the damage goes to one target. It frees up all the other ships to do various things and experiment with what they can do. It's just we can now do it in Star Trek Online because a lot of new abilities have come out to make threat tanking a thing, to make healing a thing. So it's really nice to experiment with that. And with this particular run, we also experimented with the health calculations because there is a limited amount of HP on this map, and you have to split that up around the team members. So on any of these ultra high-end DPS runs, you're going to have to skew the numbers to one person for them to get those numbers. The way the math works is if you take 575k players into this map, the most, if it goes even perfectly, everybody does the same thing, they're all running the same build, everyone will have 66k DPS. They'll all be even. So that's why you have to skew it so one person goes higher to get their upper limit, and there's going to be people that are going to go lower, and we were purposefully setting up the ships to do so. It just so also happened that multiple people got other records as well with their ships.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when it comes down to. I mean, you can go look at some other people's builds. I mean, even my own, where I got my record like 90k build that happened. That wasn't that build was just a random build, and most of the people that was in it were DPS people, and a couple of them were from much lower DPS rounds, but a couple of them were 75k members or 50k members. So really, when it came down to it, it wasn't built around making it best for me, so that so, so that everything could go on and make me do my 90k run. It was just basically it was a luck chance that happened to make that go on.
Yeah, which can happen, but when you see the really high numbers, it's people that are it's being staged, it's being thought out. The one thing I will say, some people have said that this run was a nanny run. They see the recluse, they say it's a nanny run. You can call that if you will, but quite honestly, anybody hitting over 110k, they're getting help from somewhere, whether they're skewing the numbers in their favor, they've got high debuffs from the team, they know of certain abilities that others don't, whatever the case may be. Above 110, to some degree or not, you are being helped with your DPS. But that shouldn't be a bad thing if you're just pushing yourself. There's a difference between trying to push the limits of your build just to test a theory and what's called DPS shaming, where that's kind of where my video makes the difference. I didn't post this video and then say, well, I did this and I'm better. I posted it and then explained everything we did, because it's something that I feel everybody should know. It's not something that we did that we can be worshipped for. A lot of people will do that. They'll do it for hero worship. I wanted to just get information out there to the players. Quite honestly, I can honestly say now, not only do I have this high parse, I honestly own the lowest parse on the combat tables, which I'm also very proud of. So it's one of those things. It's just fun,
Yeah,
and
it's one of those things that we do for our own personal satisfaction. It's not. I mean, we don't care if someone else has done better than us. I mean, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, for some people, it is a competition to be the number one on the board. For like Timber myself, I could care less. I mean, I'm thinking I'm like number 50 or number 70 on the board right now with a 102K run. I don't care.
I happened to get with this. I got the highest Fed tune and the highest, of course, the highest Odyssey run. Now, with that being said, I averaged 90 to 100K in this ship, and that's fine by me. You don't need any more than 50K to do 99% of this content. Hell, you don't need more than 30K to do 80% of the content. But we literally just push ourselves. That's all it is. Um, and you can do most of these numbers with free stuff that you get from the missions.
Yep.
So and as a side note, I will say, I do hope that they end up doing single DPS numbers and team-based DPS numbers. I will say that it would be a nice change because you can see what you do as an individual as a good average number, and then you can just have another table where you just push the absolute limit and it doesn't matter what happens. And then that way you can see, well, on an average I do this, but I can spike all the way up to here with help. I think that'd be a nice change because then with the team builds you could theory craft considerably.
Yep, definitely. Well, we'll go ahead and get this playing. For those who are aware and looking at the link later on, it is 100 minutes long, but we're not going to watch it all here. We're just going to watch the run itself. The first beginning phase of things is basically wait until everyone is ready. Obviously, this is a planned run to make sure that everyone has their things ready. Timber is doing his massive multiple clicking to get everything done perfectly.
No keybinds. That's my number one thing. No keybinds. I got afraid of doing keybinds when I first started the game. A lot of people said we're talking about keybinds equals botting. So I have yet to do a single keybind on my ship or any other part.
Yep.
Plus, to me, it shows more of a challenge. I've been learning a lot from Odin Knight because he fires his weapons manually. But as you can see,
you kind of have to on torpedo builds.
Torpedoes.
Yeah.
But you can see on the first phase, I didn't worry about a GDF. Your go down fighting on attack is not necessary to happen at the first phase. I've actually found it's more helpful to get it on the right side, which we do right to lefts on this. The right to left is smoother than a left to right run. It seems that the right transformer is a little bit closer to the gate than the left one, and the sphere spawns seem to be more tightly knit, especially with a gravity well. So we tend to do right to lefts for a more smooth run. But as you can see with a beam boat, what I'm trying to do with my power sliding Audi, as I've coined it, you want to be in a position where you're very close to the transformer, but you're just above it where you can use your fire at will, or if you're running torpedoes, you're probably not stopping. But you want to be able to hit all the generators as well.
Yep.
And that way you're still getting your max point blank shot bonus towards the transformer. The other thing that we're doing as we're going through here, we're timing our buffs. One thing that we learned when doing this run, that a lot of people, all they call is TAC fleet and intel fleet. But there's a lot of buffs such as sensor analysis, sensor scan, fire on your mark, beta, omega, delta, these kind of things that either do an increase or a debuff to a target. They're not being called out, and they get used at the most inappropriate time where you don't get the maximum effect. So we started calling those out, and right here we had, I believe, a sensor scan and fire my mark on the gate. We had a double sensor analysis and timeline analysis console on the cube, and that's where the heavy debuffs are. Now, not everybody's going to have the timeline analysis console.
Yeah.
But for running two science captains, they have sensor scan, they have sensor analysis, and with the right deflector, they can do a bonus debuff per second, or they can increase the damage done to the target. When you stack sensor analysis between multiple vessels, it stacks higher, like faster. It stacks faster. So you can get a higher debuff that much quicker. And that's what we were doing with the run, was we were testing debuffs because it comes to a certain point and you can't make your weapons any hotter. You can't make them any more powerful. But with debuffs, you can have a lot of debuffs. And this is where my theory of disruptors might have actually made my DPS higher in this run than anti-protons.
Yep.
Because they would have added debuffs to targets. The one thing about my build, though, it's squishy. And that's why I'm trying to modify it as a tank. I have to rely on Tankia, my friend who's running the Recluse. He's taken the Tholian console off, and he's running it as a heal boat. You will not find a better healer in this game right now. His current record is 11,000. And I will say it again, 11k heal points per second. That's how good of a healer he is. No one will die in a run when he's there. He has mastered the art of healing. It is something quite amazing, especially in Hive Space Elite. You have never seen a better healer.
Yeah, and that's a run where you really need the healing because of how much there is a kill and how much damage they can do.
Absolutely, but for this run, I needed a healer, and we have an Hydron, which is a free build. He did, I believe, 30k in that boat, and that's a very good ship. You have a Crinum Dreadnought. Not everybody's going to have those, but they are very good. Mainly ran that for the timeline analysis console to stack. But once again, like I said, you're not going to have all these boats. You're not going to have this. You're not going to have these runs. But the purpose was that with good teamwork and good piloting, you can boost your numbers 20 to 40k, and that's what I had been practicing my numbers. And we don't do warp outs. If we mess up, we just finish the run. Yep. It adds to what we can test. It adds to what we can play with.
Yeah. At that point, after the mess up happens, what we end up doing is we say, well, let's try adding this into the cube, or let's try doing this. Let's make this another feature that we see if it works very well at this point. And that's really what comes down. I mean, and that's the biggest difference between like what we do versus some other people do. We don't care if it's a screw up because we're not going to warp out. I mean, the only time we do warp out is if we decide that we want to do a 3-2 run, and that's just when we're trying to go for a fast run, not necessarily a high DPS run, but a fast run.
Also, and one thing we have noticed with Infected Space Advanced, and it's something you got to be careful of, especially on these fast runs. What we've noticed is when we're going right to left, and it sometimes happens on a left to right run, you'll have all your generators down, the cube will be down, and your spheres will spawn in. But you'll only see 3 spheres.
Yes.
You'll nuke the spheres, you'll nuke the transformer, you'll start moving off to the left-hand side, and you think you're doing fantastic. And all of a sudden the run ends, and there's a sphere over here on where the right transformer used to be, and it's still floating around.
Yep.
And I think part of it is because with these really high DPS runs or the 3-2 splits, I don't think that the map was coded for this level of speed for the run, and I think it messes up the spawn timers that are in place, and when it messes it up, it has ships spawn in early or late, considering how it's going. So it's one thing, yes, we're making record numbers, yay, fantastic. We're also breaking the mechanics of the map by going so fast, by debuffing so much. It's great to theory craft it, but they probably didn't plan on anybody being able to do this map higher than 40 or 50k when they coded the map originally after Delta Rising. These numbers, like mine, is nowhere near a record. I think the current record is what, 233k.
Yeah.
They didn't count on those kind of numbers, and I think it messes up the spawn times. So you'll have some anomalies in these runs. I couldn't tell you how many times we did a full run. Our average runs are 2 to 3 minutes, and it's just my positioning's off. Or when we're doing it for Scott and we're testing his run, one of his abilities lagged out. It gets very time consuming when you're not doing warp outs because you have to wait 30 minutes between tests. So we end up running alts with other people, so you have a various number of numbers. Yep. But the thing the thing with this run is we just wanted to prove that you can have, and I know sarcasm is going to be listened to, a sarcasm detector. You can have a Trinity style run and it be highly successful. And it's not often I say that when it comes to Star Trek Online, because Star Trek Online really doesn't have the Trinity. It's kind of, you can run any tune, any starship, and do well. But it does show with refined teamwork and people playing their professions to the best of their ability that you can have a Trinity style World of Warcraft run and still make it a huge success. It's just one of those things we like to play with. I think currently, and I'm getting Scott to do it with me, all torpedo boat ISA.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. And I've got my lowest DPS, which currently the lowest DPS on the table is 0.58. No K, just 0.58 DPS. Less than 1 damage point per second in a map.
Yep.
That's going to be fun. You got to be a true min-maxer. You got to go for the low as well as you do the high. So, but that was just the point of this video. The fact that I got a record off of this run was incredible to me. I must have jumped for joy for an hour. But it just shows
the point that was being proven that this game isn't all about DPS. You can actually do these Trinity-style games where you got a healer, a DPS, and a tank, and that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, and support boats have gotten a lot of bad rep over the past year because of certain individuals in the community using them for boosting and then not explaining it and then saying, oh, well, it's just for one player. It's gotten a lot of negative rep, and it's something that a lot of us in the DPS community and the STO the Continuum, the Pilot Review Show Facebook group, all of us together, we're trying to negate that because support boats can be amazing. You'd be surprised what having a healer in Hive Space Elite does for 2 tanks that were struggling, or for a torpedo boat like Odin, or having a gravity well boat in Crystalline Catastrophe, grouping all those targets so all the AoE abilities hit not just the crystalline but every target in between, and then having the warp core explosions go off on the crystalline. So it makes other builds important. It's making builds more diversified.
Yeah, and it kind of makes us have to push them further so that we can see what we can do with them. And I mean, some of the fun things that we enjoy is, and this is one of our fun rides that we have from time to time, is we'll do SB24, and we'll get like as many Gravwellers as we can into the run, or torpedo builds, and at the second wave we'll just sit there at the soy base and try and group them all into one location so that a torpedo guy can
Okay, that was awkward.
Sorry everyone about what happened there. It looks like my Wi-Fi decided it wanted to die. I've moved my computer around here in my office here, and I haven't reconnected the LAN connection, so let me get local recording resume. Hello? You there?
Yeah? What the hell?
The best thing I can say is Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So, okay. Looks like things are back up.
Well, I think we'd gone over most everything. Are you still recording?
Yeah, we're still recording now.
I think we've gone over most everything at this point. Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic group run. I will say, with everything that we've been testing, we had, you have the new Terran reputation. I'm honestly seeing, with all of the damage categories that we've explored and the abilities, I think disruptors are going to be able to do better than anti-protons. They might not be able to go up to 500 million K DPS, one shot, Q form, I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I think for the lower levels, up to 75K, I think disruptors might be easier to do than anti-protons.
It's
Because
very possible.
there's more options for them. Considering with anti-protons, you've only got the one set that everybody really wants, and that's crafted because of the pin modifier. You can get away with fleet ones, but everybody wants crafted. So the number one is crafted anti-protons. Whereas with disruptors, you've got options. You've got the resonant disruptor array. You've got coalition disruptors, standard crafted. You've got polarized. Now you have two types of radiation disruptors with withering disruptors coming out,
Yep.
and biomolecular. So you can really explore with debuffs, radiation damage. There's a lot of different experiments with disruptors, and the good thing about disruptors, their stacks are separate from each other. So coalition debuffs stack separately from standard, stack separately from nanite. So you can technically have multiple disruptor debuffs on the same target. And that's where I think, we're getting higher numbers when you debuff a target versus buffing up a single allied target, even though both are nice. I think it's going to be worth really exploring disruptors to see what we can do. And there's even free disruptors for people out in build. I mean, for me, I'd run beam arrays. And if you upgrade them to very rare, it's going to have a random mod attached to it. But for the basic green weapon that it is, uncommon weapon, which, it won't take that much to upgrade to a blue, they're really good disruptors for just a casual player to try. They've got a nice disruptor proc. They have a plasma damage over time proc. And it's something that if you like the way disruptors work, there's options similar to that in the game. They're pricey. It takes time. But they're nice. Same with anti-protons. You have the free anti-protons from one of the Borg missions. Nowhere near optimal mods, but it gives you an idea of, A, how they look, because I know some people pick weapons for looks, but it gives you an idea of what they can do. There's a lot of free options in the game, even fleet disruptors, or fleet anti-protons, fleet phasers. They're fairly inexpensive considering what some crafted weapons can cost over time. It's just whatever you're willing to run. I'm pretty much saying I could have done the run that we just showcased with almost any weapon. There's a few exceptions that I think I would get lower numbers, but I think I could have run my anti-protons, a modified disruptor build, or a modified plasma build, or possibly even phasers or polarons, and still gotten just as good as that run within 5k plus or minus. Just because once you get to a certain damage point, the modifiers on a weapon do not matter. It's simply how hard you're debuffing the targets or how hard you're buffing the allied target.
Yep.
The weapon mods are merely a preference, just like the color choice of a weapon. It's only in the lower forms when you're trying to break 10, 30, 50, where you're paying more attention to what the weapon does because it might help you in the long run.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things is, I mean, you can do with anything. I mean, we've done builds, done runs where we've pulled out our standard weapons and still been able to hit 30 to 50k with standard weapons. So it's not a matter of what weapon you're using, what type you're using, or if it's maxed out or whatnot. It's just how you're playing the game that's going to affect what is going on here. If you're flying head on and when you got all beam arrays and half of your weapons are going off because the other half in the back has nothing to hit, or if you're flying sideways at something and you're running dual beam banks, stuff like that is really going to affect how much DPS you're doing because you're not hitting anything with half your weapons or your majority of your weapons, depending on your ship that you're running. And that's really what it comes down to. You got to realize that where you're at versus where your weapons are is the most critical thing beyond anything else in this game for DPS. You want to increase your DPS? Change how you fly. I will say this point again. I've heard people say I fly just fine, but I'm not getting high DPS. That's not your issue. If your DPS is you thinking your DPS is your build, it's not your issue. It's your piloting that is your issue. That's going to keep you from doing anything else that you want to do.
And piloting beam arrays is totally different from torpedoes. I will say you will see some high parses where someone's running a torpedo and it's like, oh, I can combine the two. But it's certain torpedoes, certain skill point boosts to it. And quite honestly, for some of them, it's timing. There have been people that have been getting ultra high DPS runs with the neutronic torpedo in spread form. Not because it's the torpedo. The torpedo is fantastic. The neutronic is amazing.
It is amazing. Yes.
But it's also because they're using the Chemosite bug currently in the game where they have multiple copies of Chemosite on their tactical tunes. And because it procs, whether it activates or not, it almost creates a near infinite loop of proccing Chemosite that procs twice, once on launch and then once on hit. That creates a massive damage boost with torpedo spreads, especially with neutronics, because they have an AoE drain explosion on top of everything else that's going on.
Plus,
and that's why you're seeing that
as well.
Yeah, and that's one reason why you're seeing some people that aren't even running tactical consoles, they're running universals. Now, as a rule, you run tactical consoles, and I can guarantee you when Chemosite is nerfed, the people that are advertising running nothing but universal consoles and just having those kind of builds, those builds are going to plummet because they won't have the multi-procs of Chemosite, and the consoles in their tactical slots will not do them enough justice compared to running tactical consoles.
Yep. There will be a point in time when it is going to it's going to hit the wall, and it's not going to be able to go any further.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to bring up?
I mean, not really. I mean, I'm going to post the ultimate low DPS video. That's coming out soon. Of course, people are challenging me now for this record, which is amazing because it is 10 times harder to get the lowest DPS on the parse than it is the high DPS on the parser.
Yes, it is. I mean, you give you guys an idea of what we're doing what he's done to get this 0.58. He's running a turret. He fires like once at the beginning and probably once at the end.
Yeah, you're basically making sure you're the first one flying in, and you fire. I have a disruptor turret Mark 1 with common, so no mods. You're the first one to fly in on the ISA, and you fire against the shielded cube, so you're not gonna be able to do much. Then all I do during the match is heal. I heal and debuff. That's all I'm there for.
Yep. Enough to stay in combat the entire time.
Then all you do is at the very end, you're sitting there and you're watching the tac cube. Everything else is destroyed. You made for sure everything else is taken out. When the tac cube is below 10%, you have to time it right where your final turret shots hit before the tac cube nukes. Because once the tac cube goes down to 10%, everybody's debuffs have been maxed out. Everybody's hitting as hard as they can. The cube can go quick. So you have to time it where that last shot's going to hit around the 1% mark before it dies. When you do that, the combat logger is going to read you in combat for the entire time. And what it's going to do is it's going to add the first number and the last number and then divide it by the time that you are in the run. Now, since you're running a Mark 1 turret and you've only fired twice in that instance, once at the very beginning, once at the very end, your DPS plummets to next to nothing. I honestly think that I could get it down to 0.25, but I have to fire later in the match, and it gets really tough. You have no idea how tough it is to time out that last shot.
Yes, it is very, very challenging just to get it done right. And I should put a caveat on this. For those who are looking to try this, do not try and pug this.
Oh, no.
Because you will end up with an AFK timer. The only way to get around that is to do a private match with some friends who know you are doing this.
Yeah, that's the only way. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of people mad at you. And quite honestly, when we posted this in all the channels, people were looking at me going, "Wait a minute, how?" And it's just hilarious. And it started because of one of our friends, but it's one of those things that we're trying to show that the game is not just about DPS. There's been a lot of DPS shamers out there saying, "Well, my pets do 20k, so if you can't do that, you suck." There's been people out there doing that. Whereas, and they have formed people on the other side of the fence to go, "Well, all you do is DPS, and you can't PvP, and you can't do this, you can't do that." So whenever someone posts a high DPS run, they get anti DPS shamed to feel bad about themselves, and it's caused a real divide. So that's why I did it. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll be a true min maxer, and I'll go for the lowest, and I will show off just how low you can go. And I'll run torpedo boats that are not typically the best. I'll run science boats to explore those, run cannons, run heal boats. I'll run everything.
Yep.
But it's got to come to a point where the community doesn't shame one another because of what they're doing. We just look at each other and go, okay, well, would you like help with what you're doing, or are you okay with where you're at? Cool, okay. The big problem is when people try to do advanced and elite queues and they're not geared for them, because unfortunately, the way Cryptic has done their coding, you do have to do a certain level of damage output in the match for it to be successful so that you gain the optionals and within the optional time. Now, granted, they've taken away the optional time so it doesn't fail the mission, but at the same time, you never know when they might reintegrate those timers. So you always want to pay attention to those anyway. So you have to have a certain damage output. You have to have a certain level of survivability to do advanced, and especially elite. You're not going to see a team of 10k players go into Hive Space Elite and succeed unless it takes them 4 or 5 hours. You're just not going to see it.
Yeah, they won't have enough DPS because of that fact. Those are some of the things where DPS and the proper teamwork becomes necessary to
yeah, and
do everything right.
That's the only reason why it's become that way, is there are runs where DPS are a necessity. For ISA, it's not a necessity. We just do it. We use that run because it's the easiest way to parse damage output. That map does not require anything more than a bunch of people doing 10k to 15k. You can succeed if you're playing your roles, and it won't take that long. We can nuke stuff in that map, and it's not a proper gauge of DPS to other maps either. So it's basically just, well, I got that number. I have a maximum damage output of this over time. So it's one of those misconceptions about the DPS community that's really got to get away from, because everybody sees the DPS community as a bunch of elitists that are just showing off their numbers, just showing off, I'm better than you. When I honestly want to say, a lot of people that we know that are in the community, and all the communities we know that can do high damage output, would love nothing more than simply help people. And if the most that you want out of your build is 10k and you are happy with what you're doing, then they're okay with it. They're not going to push you higher. They're not going to pressure you into a cookie cutter build. They just want to help you succeed at what you want to do in the game.
Yep.
And that's what all of us really want. Because if you're happy with what you're doing and you've got it where it actually is effective, then it's a win-win. And that's all you need for an advanced and elite content. You just gotta have to gear for the content.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll put on it, if you're looking to do better with your builds, and you want some build help, you come join us in the TeamSpeak. We got a bunch of people that's typically on here almost all the time. The weekends is a little scarce on this because of the fact that there's a lot of people out enjoying the weekend. But you come join us on voice.pilotreviewshow.com for TeamSpeak, and we'll help you out with your build that you have right now, so you're not changing it to form someone else's opinions. We'll give you some suggestions and say, you know what, maybe your feedback pulse isn't doing well because you got your skills that's not pointed in that. So maybe you should drop your feedback pulse and put something else in place of it that's geared around your skill points that you have. And then from there you build up, and all of a sudden you can find yourself doing another 5-10k more because you're geared around your skills that you've skilled for yourself, and that's what you didn't know about or you weren't aware of If you want to improve your piloting, obviously submit to our show. We'll get you on here. We'll look at it, and I mean, when we look at your builds, we're not trying to look at them and say, well, you should be doing it according to our matters. No, 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 no. We're giving you a build based upon how you're flying your ship, so that you learn around your play style, because you have a unique way of doing things. I'm not going to tell you, well, here's my skill traits, this is what you need to do. People have asked, I said, I'll show you an example of what I'm doing, but do it to your own style.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my play style, I've dubbed it a power sliding glass tank because it has no heals, and I'm going to modify it. But it's a power sliding Odyssey. Someone that might pilot the Odyssey might be able to have it where they just park and they don't have to power slide into their targets. Some people might run a dual beambank Odyssey, which to me and my preferences is crazy, but for someone else it might work. So it really depends on how you're playing. All that a lot of the community wants to do is, if you're playing a certain style, they just want to help you refine it so it can be the best potential for what you're doing. That's really all it is, because you can refine a build and make it better no matter what it is. And then not only do you have a higher damage output, you're able to survive the content better. Well, then you're not dying as much. You're not waiting for your respawn to enjoy the content again. Instead, you're surviving. You have higher damage output. And on advanced queues, you're able to contribute more. When you're doing story missions, you're not sitting there, instead of enjoying the story, you're dead. You can actually fully survive. And you're not sacrificing your play style for it. You're not sacrificing your fun levels, since we all play for fun this game. But it just makes your build more refined and better for you to use. Yes. And that's all that, I mean, that's what the pilot review show is about. Refining your piloting and positioning so that you're hitting your targets better. You know how to pilot your starship better. That's all it is. We're not changing your weapons. We're making suggestions, but in the end, if you don't take the suggestions,
it's yours.
At least you know there's piloting.
Yep. And that's really what we're about. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to change. And this, to give you guys an idea, Pilot Review Show was all about what we couldn't do in the Ship Builds Facebook group. We can tell you how to do your ship build, and then if you had any other issues beyond that, after you got yourself with a perfect ship build set up, we couldn't say, well, you need to do XYZ while you fly it. We had limitations of how we could actually do things. And so the Pirate Review Show came because we had that need. We had a need to say, you know what, submit a video, we'll go around your video, and we will do things accordingly. I would love to sit and discuss more, but unfortunately I am seeing a lot of packet drops with my Wi-Fi. I got to get my Ethernet ran over here so I can actually run my computer properly. So we'll go ahead and cut the show to an end here. But make sure to come down to our website, pilotreviewshow.com, submit your videos in, and I promise you, I mean, you're going to get undivided attention from two people who know exactly what they're doing. We'll give you tips, suggestions. We'll tell you what you're doing when you're flying, how you can improve it. You know, even if I only increase you by 1 or 5k DPS because of as a result of what we've talked about, I will continue working with you after the show, even if I have to get you up to the point where you want to be at. If you want to be hitting 100k, then we'll work with you to get you built up to that point.
Or if you want to hit 20k but be unkillable, we can help you with that too.
Yes.
So it's just whatever your goals are. Literally, whatever you want out of your ship, we can make it happen. And if we personally can't do it,
we know people who can.
I guarantee you, we know every aspect of the game as far as the people. We can ask anyone that we know, and they will be able to help you out. So it's one of our goals that if we don't have the resources between the two of us, we know the people that do, and we can get you in contact with them immediately.
Yep. Anyways, thank you for all for joining us. We appreciate you and your support. We'll make sure to check you out on the TeamSpeak when you come and join us there, and make sure to hit us up there when you want to improve yourselves. Talk to us personally in the Facebook groups. We'll be all around everywhere when it comes down. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.